Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, June 21st, 2016. This is the June meeting of the Citizens Finance Advisory Committee. Welcome, everyone. We have a quorum present. All members except Roscoe Mathieu are present and accounted for. So I'll call this meeting to order. First off, any committee members' announcements or presentations? Thank you. I'll proceed with the agenda. Any public comment? Okay, I will. Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. And thank you, Brooke. I do want to make an announcement that there are openings for anybody watching this or any of our citizens in Morro Bay. There are presently 2 openings for the Citizens Finance Committee Board, and those openings application period closes this Friday, June 24th at 5 p.m. You can pick up an application online or at City Hall, drop it off there. It's a relatively simple, straightforward one-page fill-in-the-blanks application. So we welcome anybody that is interested in participating, has maybe some finance or accounting background, but doesn't require a significant amount of accounting or budgeting experience. We would welcome your participation and help, so please feel free to apply. All right, so we will proceed with the agenda item A1, minutes from the meeting of May 17th, 2016 are documented, included in the agenda package. And are there any corrections or updates or clarifications?
I don't see anything. I move we approve the minutes.
All right, thank you. Marlis has moved we approve the minutes from the May 17th, 2016 meeting. And Betty has seconded that motion. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries 4-0. I do have a question, Susan, on the minutes on the of that meeting on the presentation on the SLOCOG, the tax initiative. Is there anything city staff or council would be looking from this group in terms of a recommendation or approval of that initiative? Or was the presentation just FYI so we can communicate to the citizens in the community?
It was an FYI presentation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving right along, item B1, the agenda. Susan has submitted the fiscal year 16 to 17. That would be July 1st, 2016 to June 30th, 2017 approved budget. There were 2 budget workshops. Several of us attended those, and council approved the budget at the last city council meeting. We wanted to discuss and maybe see if we have any questions or anything we understand or don't understand. Susan, thank you for those 5-page summary. I thought that was very helpful and a nice high-level summary. So why don't we start with a summary of all budgeted funds. That would be the first page. And ask my committee members, is there any discussion, questions?
I do have some questions. Excuse me. I do have some questions. If that's
yeah, please
all
go
right.
ahead.
And really, it's mostly clarification. First of all, can I ask about the capital replacement fund? And does that refer just to buildings, or does it include all of the city's infrastructure? Might it include streets?
It's primarily for saving money for our buildings.
For buildings only?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions on that page? I guess we'll go through one at a time so we're not jumping back and forth.
Well, I didn't understand all of the terminology, so maybe I could ask about lower cost visitor accommodations mitigation, not knowing what that is.
That is a charge that is imposed by the Coastal Commission, and it's imposed on any hotels or lodging establishments that are built in the coastal zone. They have to pay a fee, and that fee is to provide an offset to people who are unable to afford some of the high prices for a hotel room. So they want to stay on the coast, and they want to stay down by the beach, but they can't, it's not something they can afford. So in doing that, unless they were going to create an affordable unit in their hotel, they would pay this fee to the Coastal Commission. We would hang on to it and offer some sort of some kind of either like a coupon or something along that line that people could use to get a discount in hotels. Use it to do remediation on any facilities that we own that are campgrounds, or at one point, when this first started, Morrill Strand was possibly going to shut down. We were going to use this money to operate it for a little while. So anything that you can do to maintain the ability for lower cost visitors to be able to come and stay. That's what it's for.
And at this point, it's just sitting there as a beginning balance.
Yes.
And you don't anticipate anything either coming in or going out this year.
Not right now, but I know we do have something that's being built down on the Embarcadero that unless they build an affordable unit, they'll be paying into this as well. And right now when I just checked the other day, there was about $53,000 in there.
Yep, that's exactly right, 53,618. Should I continue, or are there other?
On this page.
Yes,
Yeah.
just on this page, yep. And can I ask you, where does the state gas tax revenues transfer to?
Those transfer to the general fund so that the general fund can perform street maintenance.
Okay.
There are three divisions in the general fund that the gas tax supports. One is our street maintenance fund, one is our street lighting fund, and the other one is our storm drain fund, or division. They're not funds, they're divisions.
And is that something that's mandated by the state so that they specify where the gas tax monies need to be spent?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And a term that comes up often is the parking in lieu. Can you describe that one for me?
Parking in lieu is a money that's collected on a building, any kind of new building or any kind of expansion of a building. So either you have to provide parking or you pay an in lieu fee. And I believe the spaces, the last loan that I did, the spaces were $15,000 a piece. But it depends on where you are. But you have to either provide sufficient parking for your building for the employees or for the people that are going to come in and visit you, or you pay a fee.
And does that's just then becomes part of the general fund revenues?
No, it's
not
in its own special fund.
Okay, and is that used for something in particular then?
It can be used for striping parking lots, rehabbing parking lots, purchasing parking lots if we have enough money. We did that back in 2002 when we purchased the Brannigan's property that's now DeStasio's, and the lot that's across the street. We purchased that with parking in lieu money.
Okay, thank you. And how about the utility discount rebate?
That is a program for all residents who are currently participating in the PG&E Care program. So the person would have to be our customer. Their name would have to be the one on the account that's participating in the PG&E program, and their name would have to be the same. So the PG&E customer also has to be the name on our customer. We offer a discount of, I think it's $8 a month, which is about 10% of a utility bill. And we get money from our sewer fund, penalties only, and the discretionary money. And then water, we take the penalties, the application fee, and I think any charges we have for NSF checks, we put that into the utility discount rebate program. And then also the WEUs that we have in our water accumulation fund, we collect money for, and we'll have to have Rob Livick or maybe a PWAB person can explain WEUs better than me. But that goes into there as well because we have people who participate in our rebate programs with low flow toilets, water conserving washers, and any other type of water conservation projects.
And so any payments out would come from this fund?
Yes.
Okay. And then the funds at the very bottom of the page here, water accumulation, sewer accumulation, harbor accumulation, these are just monies that have been put into those funds, is that correct? And so it's cash balance that you're starting with?
Yes.
Okay. That's my questions. Thank you.
Thanks. I just have two quick questions. One's really clarification. The first thing is on the general fund emergency reserve, only $20,000. That seems very low. Is that because we're already at the percentage we're supposed to be maintaining there? The general fund emergency reserve, it's $3.6 million, and it shows revenue of $20,000.
The revenue that's coming there is interest income, and our interest income, as you know, is pretty pathetic.
Okay, that's okay. But we have the appropriate amount in the fund, so we don't have to transfer in from anywhere else. That's what I was
That's
also
correct.
looking
We're
at.
actually going to show a greater balance than what we anticipated, and if we don't wind up having a recession, we'll increase that as well.
Okay, thanks. And the second question, just real quickly, to make sure we're looking at this correctly, when we look at the summary of all the budgeted funds revenues, really what the city has to work with is, the way I see it, is the operating and capital estimates, the 32 and 6, approximately 38 million, that since the transfers in and out are a wash. So that's basically, and part of the reason I'm asking is when you compare to other cities, we're talking 38.4 million. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Because sometimes that can get distorted by the beginning cash, the ending cash. I want to make sure. So that's what we have to work with. That's all I have. Dave?
I wanted to ask about the revenues over under net transfers and expenditures column. And I did the arithmetic, so I figured out how the numbers were derived. I noticed that most of them are positive numbers, which is good, meaning there's more revenue than expenditure. Mm-hmm. But there are some that are negative numbers. And it looks like some of these might be internal service funds like facility maintenance and the transit fund, which is an enterprise fund, I believe. So what's the reason for the negative numbers in those funds?
The General Fund Facility Maintenance Fund is planning to spend money that they have accumulated. The idea with that fund was they were getting the money from the Salwasser loan proceeds, and that was about $100,000 a year. The idea is that they were going to complete about $100,000 in facility maintenance, and it's major maintenance that they're doing. What wound up happening one year was we entered into an agreement with the California Energy Commission to upgrade some of our HVAC units, and we talked to them about getting into a low-interest loan, and so there were loan documents that we did, and some of the projects that had been on there were related to this loan, so we didn't do anything with them. And we accumulated a little more money than we had planned to. Plus, we had some people that left, and it made our crews a little thin. So this year, we are planning to do a little bit more aggressive work in the 16-17 year, do more aggressive work on our facility maintenance. Plus, we're going to be very involved with the CEC loan and purchasing the HVAC unit. So we're going to spend money that we've saved.
At the bottom line, it's positive 1,397,061. How's that money used? Is that used to adjust out at the end of the year, balance accounts out at the end of the year? Or what's the reason for the positive balance in there?
Well, you've got some funds that are saving money. And so one in particular is the sewer accumulation fund, which you can see is going to grow by 1.298. Yeah. So that's a big part of that. We've got sewer accumulation that's planning on growing intentionally because it's saving money for the wharf facility. So that's the bulk of it. The rest of it is, for whatever reason, we're not going to spend money in a fund, or we're not going to spend all of it because perhaps we have something going on the next year. That's kind of how that washes out. Sometimes we'll overspend because we didn't do something in the prior year that we're now planning on doing, but the revenues don't match. We're just using our accumulated cash.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Betty, go ahead, please.
I don't have very many questions, but what I wanted to know is everything is included in here in this budget, whether it's a line item or a contract and everything else is all included.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we can move right along to the all funds revenue by category, which is the same numbers, just distilled a different way, if you will, and indicating where they're coming from, which I think is useful to know that the taxes versus the charges for services, I'm sure that's, and then fines, license permits. So, and when we get on to our budget-friendly documents, we may have some comments on how we'd like this depicted. But in general, this is just a summary of what's on the previous page, just sorted differently.
Yes.
Okay, so does anybody have any comments or questions on this? Let's start with Betty and go down this way.
No, I don't have any. Thank you.
No questions?
Yeah, and the numbers add up exactly. I double checked, so I didn't have any.
I didn't have any questions on that page either.
Okay, thanks. So let's move along to the all funds expenditures, page 3 of 5 of this. And once again, what I find interesting about this one, this particular chart, is that it really shows it by the category. Once again, personnel, supplies, contract services, and then a few others that are somewhat smaller other than the capital account, of course. So I didn't have any specific questions on this. Again, for the sewer accumulation, that was the only one I was interested in, $744,000. Is all of that for the new WRF, or is that a portion between capital projects on the existing plant and the new one?
Yes.
The latter?
It's a combination.
Okay. We'll get more on that subject later, I promise.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions from anybody on the all funds expenditures by category? Go ahead, Betty.
I just was wondering on personnel. Are you projecting any new openings, and are they in here for personnel?
You're talking about existing positions that are going to be vacated?
Existing positions that are going to be vacated, and then are there any positions that are going to be refilled? Are they included in here?
Yes,
Okay.
Everything will be in there.
Again, this would be a budget, right? So in theory, everything should be in here. And we would anticipate any adjustments to this, we would see an amended budget during the quarterly time of the year. Okay. Dave, anything?
No questions.
Marla?
No.
Perfect. Okay, let's move along. And I'll give us all a chance if we have any summary comments or suggestions after I just wanted to go through first. General fund revenues by source, that would be page 4. Again, just a different slice and dice, if you will, the numbers. I found that somewhat helpful because it went back to 2012 doing a comparison. And, it's kind of interesting to the next budget, 5-6 years later, looks like we're only off by, or not off, we've only increased by 300,000, which I think doesn't even account for a modest 2% inflation rate over 10 years. So that's interesting. That tells you your revenues are not keeping in line just with plain old inflation. That's what it tells me anyways.
Yep.
Any questions, comments on that?
I do have a question about where we would find the state gas tax in this.
It's not a general fund item. So
it's a
what
transfer in.
Yes, it's
okay.
down in the transfers in.
Okay. And then the reason why there is a property tax in lieu sales tax all previous years, but no entry in this year's budget.
Oh, for the sales tax in lieu?
Yeah.
That is part of the triple flip that was unwound. And now you're seeing if you look down to your sales tax number, how much it's grown, that's pretty much in relationship to the number that you saw as the previous budget.
I see.
So the triple flip was dependent on that bond 57 or Proposition 57 and the bond being paid off. Does that mean it'll be paid off next year and that's why it's flipped down below?
It's paid off.
That's good because that's very confusing and very few, and that's hard to understand. So if we're going to package anything for the community.
Right, it almost needs a footnote to explain that. Okay, and then the use of money and property, I'm curious what's included in investment income and rents?
Investment income and rents are the city rental properties that we have. We've got a house on Dune Street. We have an apartment on the Embarcadero. We have Morro Dunes RV and Trailer Park, and then we also have that's not in there, just the Morro Dunes RV Park.
Okay, and it would also include the facilities rental, so when people use this facility or other facilities?
It could. More of that is included, primarily that's included in the recreation services budget.
Okay.
Because what we're accounting for here is interest and rents, and a facility rental may or may not, we might not put that in there. I think those were more captured in recreation services because that's a functional revenue, whereas renting property is not a normal governmental process. So we kept that as true as we could just to Morro Dunes, our property we rent, and then the other ones that we have.
Okay. And although it's not a lot of money, I'm just curious to know what kinds of things are included in other revenues.
Other revenues, the biggest other service charges or other revenues?
Other revenues.
Other revenues was $13,300, and I'm sorry I didn't bring a breakdown on that.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not a lot. You seem to have thought of everything. I was just curious to know.
I can tell you another service charges. The majority of that is curbside recycling money. That's
okay.
like 20. That might actually be all of it. I think it's pretty close to $24,000.
Okay. Yep. So that's all the questions I had. Thanks.
Okay. Then I believe this gets us to the last page. Once again, general fund, and to think of that, the overall budget being $38 million, general fund being in the almost $13 million range. But this actually slices it by category, and it's interesting to note, and I know you'll see it, we'll discuss it later, but over 70% of that is personnel costs. And the fringe is all included in here, obviously, correct?
Yes.
Retirement contributions. But anyways, it's just a nice distillation, if you will, of where the monies are spent by category. So does anybody have any questions or comments on this? Please, go ahead, Dave.
Can you explain vacancy rate?
The vacancy rate is something that was established by our consultant management partners. Management partners reviewed how our employment, let me step back, how often we have vacancies in employment. So officers that turn over, office workers that turn over, managers that turn over. And he established a vacancy rate based on that. So it's a function of the salary savings that we experience on an annual basis based on employees that have left our employment and their positions have a gap in being refilled. In some cases, not refilled. More often, we do refill, but we'll usually have a gap in there. Generally speaking, an employee will tell us when they're going to leave, we hope a couple of weeks in advance. Sometimes they don't, especially with police officers who are involved in backgrounds. They don't know until pretty much the last minute that they've cleared background and they're ready to go. They let us know, but we can't really advertise and begin recruiting right away for that position until we know for sure that the person's going to leave. So you've got another month and a half process after that person leaves, and you've got a gap, and that's what the vacancy rate is.
Great, thank you.
So the obvious would be if you have an overlap of transitioning new employees, that number would be negative like everything else.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so any general comments on this? Go ahead.
I was just going to say that it seems to me that we have the data that would be necessary to produce a public-friendly budget document right here in front of us, and that this is what you would draw from. I think most of the information, along with the little text, is right here in these pages. So, thank you.
Very helpful. The comment I wanted to make is that it's unfortunate we didn't get a chance to review this before the budget, and I understand with the timing and the audit and the budget workshops, but I think if the rest of my committee colleagues agree, we would make a recommendation maybe in our next update to council that we would like to be involved a little bit ahead, especially now that we can get the data at a little higher summary level on this for future, for next year, basically. So any thoughts on that? Or
I agree. I would like to get the information.
Mm-hmm. It sounds very practical to do it that way.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it was included in our work plan, so I think it was just a timing issue this year, but next year. Thanks.
Exactly. It's similar to, we've had this for years with the Measure Q funds sometimes, and several of us on the committee back then had said, why are we reviewing expenditures after the fact? Because if we find anything that is inconsistent with the guidelines in the proposition of Measure Q, then they have to be reversed at year end or afterwards. So that's it. This just follows that logic. If the Finance Committee is going to make some advisory recommendations, hopefully we would be able to see at least at a summary level. So thanks for your understanding, and I'll include that in our comments once we document this to council. Okay, so I think that concludes this item. And now that brings us to item B3, which is the budget-friendly documents. Let's see if that's where.
That'd be B2.
B2, thank you. Okay, so Dave Batant was kind enough to do some research. We've had some discussion on this, and I'm glad, Susan, you've kept it on the agenda as I had asked, because we want to keep this on the agenda until we come to some closure here. But anyways, now would be the time to have some discussion, and Susan pulled together some stuff that she had done actually in 2013 to council, which I thought was very good. Some summary docs. Oh, I'm sorry. You did? Brooke did? Okay. Thank you. And then Dave was kind enough to do some research from his former city where he was employed, plus several other good cities that might be some good metric measurements. And those have all been distributed to everybody, so let's have some discussion. And then I have something to actually distribute that I pulled together, kind of looking at all these. But I wanted to see what other people thought first, then I'll just pass this out and open it up for comment. So go ahead.
Well, I did look at all of the documents that you sent. Thank you very much. I appreciated that. And I thought there were some really good examples that we can draw on in what has been sent. As I mentioned, I think at the last meeting, I believe that we probably are talking about several different documents, at least 2 and possibly 3. And we talked about a very simple, perhaps one-page document that would really just be the highest level summary, and that might be all that the citizens would be interested in. Basically, where does the money come from and where does it go? And then the overall picture, the financial picture that includes all of the various funds, so not just the general fund, but the water and sewer and whatnot. And I know that the Santa Rosa one that was sent, which was called Budget at a Glance, that was a shorter version of the longer version. I liked that one a lot. I also liked the Irvine one, which was a trifold. I thought that was a very nice idea. But both of them include that same kind of high-level summary information. Then you also included a number of much longer ones, which I suppose would be a sample for a longer version that we might put on the website for people to access that wanted more information. And I noticed that I just wrote some comments, and I don't know if I should share them all at this point or let others speak, but I thought that the Galt one was a little too wordy, too much words. I liked the Placerville one. Well, that was also a shorter version. And then the Santa Rosa, which I guess was very, very long. I thought too long, but I really liked the idea of a glossary, some kind of an explanation of the terms and some basic understanding of what do transfers in and transfers out mean, and some of the words that the financial terms that are used, which would be very helpful for non-financial people to understand it. I really liked the slow budget. I thought that was fairly short, 4 pages, but it contained a lot of information, and I liked the fact that there were frequently asked questions on there, and I think that they had also, as I recall, provided a summary of funding by goals and objective, which I thought was a very good idea, since the city has established goals to show how many resources are going toward each one. And the Healdsburg one I thought was also too long and wordy. And I think I've covered them. Oh, Walnut Creek. Walnut Creek. How could I forget Walnut Creek, the Cadillac? That would be nice to aspire to, but I cannot imagine that we would find the resources to develop and produce that. Very detailed, very professional, but maybe not quite what we could aspire toward that, but I don't think we can start there. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Good comments. Dave or Betty?
Well, I took a different position when I was looking at this. I just made a chart, and I said the first thing would be a small item which says, where does your money go? And you just make a arrow and how it goes, where it comes in, have a little glossary with that, and make it as simple as possible. Then I said, if you're going to go into the next step, which I did like the trifold, where you add your goals and objectives and how the money went to those goals and objectives, and then and also include a glossary, because each time you bring something up, you'll have a different definition to add to it. And then the third one I thought could be 2-page, 3-page, more of a detailed one that you would want to give to those people that were a little bit more interested in, more facts and figures, etc. But I looked at it as a small pieces just to start it out and see how it would work out and what the feedback was.
Thank you. Good comments. Dave?
I'm putting these documents into basically three categories. There's a quick 1 or 2 page budget at a glance type of summary. Uses a lot of pie charts, easy to read tables. The next level is a budget in brief type of summary where it goes into a little bit more detail. That could take up to 4 pages. And that's going to be, the budget at a glance document to me is something that can either be a handout or a utility bill insert once a year. The other may be something that would be posted on the website. And for those who are interested in more detail, that would be the audience for that. And then the third budget document is obviously the budget itself. And a lot, in some of the instances I came across, the budget document actually incorporates the budget at a glance and the budget in brief. It typically starts off with the city manager's transmittal letter, which is a very important part of the budget. Gives the city manager's overview of what is actually going on in the community economically and with the budget itself, what the priorities are. And then followed by what I would consider to be more user-friendly to the average person, which would include more of the pie charts, the easy-to-read tables, and then putting all of the long, detailed tables at the end of the document. Also, with the Santa Rosa budget, and also City of Ventura, they're providing some additional items that, in fact, let me see if I can pull that up so I can make sure I can know what I'm talking about here. Sorry. Santa Rosa, a good table of contents. Then it goes into the budget transmittal letter. Then there's a guide to the document. I think Marlis might have mentioned that. Talks about how the document is actually organized and provides some higher level information. Budget overview with easy to read tables. Gets into the pie charts and so on. And then the other thing I liked about the Santa Rosa budget was they include it covers the budget CIP overview. It also gets into the city goals and objectives, covers special tax measures, and it includes a budget calendar and process so that people will know how, what the timeline is for actually putting the budget together and getting it approved by council. Now, again, given the limitations of the city staff and whatnot, Santa Rosa is a much larger community. They have a lot more staff to be able to put a document like that together. I'm sure Ventura is in the same position. So you're talking about a city of 170,000 people with over 1,000 employees and so on. So I wouldn't necessarily expect Morro Bay's budget to be that detailed and include all of that. But I think it probably, if we could put together some of this information that's easier to read, more user-friendly, then once it gets established, it can be updated year after year and maybe be improved upon to make the actual budget document itself more interesting to read and more informative for average people. So again, that's the way I'm looking at it, the three types of categories. I think it's important that the city include the city goals. And also, some of these other complete budget documents, when they get into the summary for each department, they actually include a description of what the department does. And they also include goals for the coming year and what they accomplished in the previous year. And I think that type of information would be helpful to the average citizen looking at that document. Again, this is something that could evolve over time as these items get added to the budget. The initial work to do it would probably be a little bit painful, but they could be updated updated and year after year. And I think it would get easier over time to include that type of information. So Roscoe Matu and I are on the subcommittee for the public-friendly budget documents. And what I would really like to either get out of this meeting or maybe the next meeting, because I believe we're going to be doing extending this process into the next meeting. I'd really like to get an idea of what we should be focusing on. What type of documents we should be focusing on, what kind of information will go into these documents. And I'd also like to get an idea from the committee what the expectation is for the end product, what we're going to produce out of this subcommittee. Are we going to actually be responsible for producing a budget-friendly document or documents? Or is this just going to be a set of recommendations that we're going to make to the city manager in a memo form or something like that? So I'd like to get a better understanding of what we're expected to produce here.
I would think that the expectation from council is that you'll